The majority of the human race does not see global warming as a serious threat. Celebrate! Climate legislation is dead.
We, in the global north, with less than 20% of the population, are responsible for over 70% of global emissions.
We are drilling all over the place.
On the other side of the world, those people who are the most affected by climate change, most affected by environmental injustice, have the least responsibility for creating this crisis in the first place.
The amount of fossil fuel that we're combusting year on year is growing. We're going in completely the wrong direction.
I've spent 6 years wandering through the wreckage caused by the carbon in the air and the economic system that put it there.
That old paradigm will be forced to change, either by the environment around us or by us.
We are all part of this movement!
The environment is everyday issue. It's the air we breathe. It's the water we drink. It's the food we eat. And we can't live without these things.
The Kenya Climate Science, Technology and Policy Roundtables brought together leading climate scientists, think tanks, key policymakers, private sector, community members, among others, to exchange ideas on evidence-based policy making on climate change in Kenya.
All this research on ecology, biodiversity is also really informing, how policy on climate change, because we're looking at now 3 streams. There's community-based adaptation, there's ecosystem-based adaptation, and there's the nature-based solutions. So all these are informed by different aspects of science and research. So I see them as being very critical in informing policy.
The 4 roundtables attracted over 200 participants and focused on different thematic areas. The first roundtable focused on science, technology, and innovations in influencing the policy-making process.
Our universities and the academia and the research institutions can come up with new knowledge, new technologies, new innovations that can enable us to respond to climate change.
Adaptation arena, we need to share knowledge quickly because it's a learning by doing process, and we're doing a lot of things. As we do, we have to learn and we have to share that learning. One of the ways we plan to do this is through the International Conference on Community-Based Adaptation.
The second discussed ecosystem and community-based adaptation, as well as nature-based solutions in climate change policy making.
We are saying we want community-based adaptation projects and the programs. How much of this information has filtered down to the communities? Or are we just coming one day telling them this is what is happening, and then after that they say, well, we'll wait until they come again and they bring in some money? I think we need to generate not just the need, but also the know-how and the way out. The community must see the way out, other than wait for me to go and tell them what to do.
Communities are key players in adaptation to climate change, as demonstrated from various engagement with communities who draw from local knowledge to enhance resilience. The third delved into legal issues and inclusivity in Kenya's climate change bill and policy.
The bill, its main role is to coordinate the issues of climate change in the whole country in terms of mainstreaming climate change in all sectors of our economy. You find that all the processes that have been defined there, like the formulation of national climate change action plan, it's all inclusive. It involves the people. If you go at the county level, we also have county climate change action plan, which also involves the people. So it's all inclusive, and it hopes to bring everybody on board, because climate change is cross-cutting, and therefore everybody must be involved.
The role of county governments in a devolved governance structure cannot be overemphasized, since they are primary decision makers at the grassroots level.
Based on the debates that we had, there's a lot of work on implementation and enforcement that has to be done. The bill and policy set out, the institutional structures quite clearly, but the question on enforcement remains key.
While the fourth examined climate change finance in Kenya.
Without finance, we may not move very far. We can have brilliant ideas, but we really need the liquidity. We need the financial resources to be able to respond to climate change. Given that response to climate change is actually a global collective action requirement. So every small bit we do by ourselves has got an additive value to the global target of ensuring that we have a comfortable living environment endowed with all the natural resources that we require today and in future. And therefore, finance becomes very, very critical. What would make a potential investor in a climate action consider it a worthy business to invest in?
Science and technology in climate change adaptation policy is important, as was highlighted by the Bangladesh example.
After Hurricane Sandy hit the northeast of the United States, I went and gave a lecture at Columbia University in New York on lessons for New York from Bangladesh, where we have a very successful program of hurricane and cyclone evacuation. We successfully evacuated 2 million people at the last cyclone that occurred in Bangladesh. Okay, so Bangladesh is really very well developed. Early warning system, shelters for people to go to, a whole set of activities, organizational innovations that has enabled us to do that. In America, they don't have that. In New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, when it hit, more than 1,000 people died in the richest country in the world.
Policy requires scientific information. You can not make quality policy if you don't have quality research findings. For researchers to generate knowledge, innovations and technologies, we need budgetary support.
We have funding for adaptation now coming through the Adaptation Fund and the Green Climate Fund. We have a lot of activities at the national and local level taking place around the world. So this is a very good time to promote adaptation and share experiences of adaptation, both within Kenya, in Africa and globally.
Whereby scientists can go to the field and do their research in a peaceful environment, in a secure environment. So that is the role of politics. We need that safe operating space.
Policy issues concerning adaptation and climate change framework were explored to underline the importance of robust legislation.
We are trying to come up with policies that are supposed to be implemented with issues of climate change and things that can be put in place so that issues of climate change can be incorporated into institutions or government.
Innovations for climate change adaptation and mitigation need to be supported for uptake and upscaling. Policy frameworks have to contemplate these in their formulation and implementation.
Adaptation to climate change also presents real opportunities through innovation, okay? Real opportunities through innovation and application of science and technology that can actually help us both accelerate our rate of development, okay, and sort of help us enhance social protection for vulnerable groups or groups that would be vulnerable to the impacts of climate change.
It was emphasized that climate change interventions have to be suited for local context, even in similar ecosystems.
So you don't go to a community and think that you are the only one who has the knowledge. That community also has a lot of knowledge. And in doing so, we are trying to coordinate the many knowledge centers to see how we can help it solve the messy problems that are created by climate change. In Kenya, we tend to look for innovation to come from the north, and we tend to compete with the north. But we forget that the innovation is within our families, our village. And what we need to do is to look at some of the chores that are really breaking the back of our people and say, how do we do it better? And if we do that and challenge the young people to come up with the good ideas, to see how we can do that better, then we will be transforming the society, we will be transferring technology but it will be our indigenous technology.
The Roundtable is also focused on ecosystem-based adaptation, community-based adaptation, and nature-based solutions in Kenya climate change policy making.
The shift from business as usual to making a business case for work, for climate change projects. I think to date, all work has been focused on grant funding, but never with a business case with how we're going to add value, how we're going to make a profit, how can we make returns on this and report back and say this is a success that emerged from this project.
The 21st century, the continent is grappling with challenges ranging from food insecurity to unemployment to rising youthful population and worst of all, ecological degradation and climate change. And the solutions to some of these challenges sometimes are conflicting and at the same time also competing with one another. And so to be able to address the challenges that the continent faces today in a holistic manner, it is quite very imperative to be able to look at which kind of approach can be able to address each of these challenges that I've mentioned. And from an EBA perspective, which is actually part of an overall adaptation strategy, and to put it in simplistic terms, it is actually working with nature and not against nature to ensure that the services provided by ecosystems, whether it is nutrients recycling in the soil, whether it is ensuring that our water continues to flow, our forests provide the services that most communities depend on. These are actually what underpins these healthy ecosystems. And one of the aspects of this ecosystem is to ensure that they're healthy, and sustainable utilization of them must be taken into place. And if you look at this within the context of the other aspects that you mentioned, which is CBA and nature-based solutions, these are actually derivatives of healthy ecosystems, and therefore ecosystems-based adaptation actually constitute the denominator.
Question: what if global warming isn't only a crisis? What if it's the best chance we're ever going to get to build a better world? Change or be changed?
There are limits. Let's celebrate the limits because we can reinvent a different future.